Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Score Connect. I am so excited today because at long last, we are finally talking about the big wide world of funding, and it is such an important topic to our small business owners. We are excited today to have Luis Perotti with us. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Luis is with Republic Bank, and I need to say, I've been asked to say, everything that we will be talking about today will be Luis's opinion and his experience, not the opinion of Republic Bank or the Small Business Administration. But apparently, this is a topic that you have a ton of experience with. Am I right?
Yes, I've been in banking for more than 20 years, doing small business, commercial loans, different kind of loan programs that we offer. So yeah, it's been a long, good ride.
A long, good ride. Yeah. Well, we have known each other for quite a while, not only through SCORE, but through other networking like organizations and groups and that kind of thing. And one of the reasons I was so excited to have you here is because of that experience that you bring, not only in the banking and the loan industry, but also working with small business owners specifically. So working with people who come in and have a lot of questions and need some of that special hand-holding, because if we're being honest, a lot of people who are smart, but start a small business do not know how to do this. Like I own a business and I've never even applied for a loan. I've just started it on my own. And if you asked me to do this today, I'd be like, where do I even begin?
Right. It takes a village, a lot of good supporters, advocates, attorneys, accountants, bankers that they know your business, they know you, and they can help you move to the next level and grow your business. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So we have done a different podcast where we talked about Kickstarter funding. And that was a really specific episode where we talked to one of our SCORE clients about crowdfunding. This is completely different. And we were really careful in that episode to distinguish the difference between something like crowdfunding versus applying for a loan. And what I'd love to start with is, what is an SBA loan?
That's a good question. SBA loan is a government loan that provides a guarantee to business loans made by financial institutions like us at Republic Bank to provide access to capital. The SBA provides a guarantee on the bank's loan for qualified applicants and transactions. Depending on the program and the loan size, the SBA can provide guarantees for 50, 75, or 85% of the total amount. And also, in case of disasters, SBA offers direct loans in the event of a situation like that. A good example was the EIDL loans that happened in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Okay. Because they did the PPP loans, which was really separate. But then I heard about the you said EIDL, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I heard about those as well. So I applied for the PPP, right? And I did that through my bank, but I did it the Small Business Administration. So there's lots of different, like you said, lots of different options. But a normal, everyday, like non-COVID specific loan through the SBA, who's eligible for that? You mentioned, people that are eligible. What does that look like to be eligible for an SBA loan?
Basically, who's eligible for SBA loans are U.S. citizens or legal permanent resident alien. It has to be a for-profit entity, so no investments or non-for-profits are qualified. For commercial real estate, it must be 51% or more owner-occupied. They like to see 60% for ground-up constructions for SBA 504. In terms of size standards, the maximum tangible net worth of the business has to be $15 million and 2-year average net income after federal income of $5 million. Additional criteria based on loan requests and structure may apply, such as refinances and fully secured provisions. I know there is a lot of numbers in here, but basically, non-for-profits are not eligible. Investment companies, investment real estate. We see a lot of that in Nashville, right? They don't qualify for this government guarantee loan. So it has to be a for-profit entity and looking for either to start or grow their business.
Understood. So if I was thinking about applying for a business, and again, you said a lot of numbers in there, and I think what I heard is maximum numbers rather than minimum numbers, right? So if I was saying, hey, I want to start my business right now, I own a marketing agency and I want to get that going and I need some capital, it's actually is it better to apply on the front end or sooner? Because I heard you mention some maximum numbers in there.
Right.
It'd be really great to have a $5 or $15 million company, but to your point, a marketing agency isn't bringing in nearly as much money, right out of the gate as something like commercial real estate, right? The numbers are really different there. So when do you recommend, if people feel like they're eligible, that they come in and start to have conversations about SBA loans?
The Small Business Administration focus on the small businesses. So they don't want to provide these government guarantee loans to big, large companies. So whether you're a startup or you've been in business for 1, 2, 3, 5 years, and your income and revenue is below the numbers that I share, you will be eligible for this kind of support. And it's a way for the government to create more jobs, to create more and better services in the community, and give clients access to needed funds to continue to grow.
Yeah. So when I'm ready to do that, where do I go to get an SBA loan?
That's a good question. You have to go to an SBA preferred lender. There are many banks, like Republic Bank is an SBA lender. That means that our turnaround time is faster, is quicker, because we already been approved. So whatever we approve there's a very good chance that the government will approve as well.
Because you're working with the SBA, right, Luis? So you're doing you as the bank have already worked with the SBA to say, we know what a good loan looks like.
Correct.
So when you're sitting with someone in the room and actually talking to them one-on-one, and you are potentially qualifying them, like you said, they're more likely to get that SBA loan because you guys already know what to look for. Is that right?
Exactly. That's why having a good relationship with a banker who knows your business, your opportunities and challenges, and how to overcome those and get you the funds that you need is very important, building that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say I come in, and thank you for explaining that. So when we come in and say, okay, hey, I'm ready for an SBA loan. Now, I've heard, this is, things you hear in the entrepreneurial grapevine is that, I need to have, a 60 to 70 page business plan, and it needs to have all of my financial modeling, and it needs to have a full marketing strategy, and it has to have, this gigantic plan thought top to bottom in order to apply for a bank loan. Is that true? What is it that what we're really coming to the table with, and what are the SBA loans looking for to be qualified?
That's a very good question. For an established business like you doing advertising, marketing, we need to have historical financial information, like your tax returns. We will request a personal financial statement to see your assets, liability, your net worth. A P&L as well, and a balance sheet. If you have assets, a building, for example, that can guarantee the loan is important. I don't think we need a long business plan. Being in college and doing my MBA, I know we used to do those 60, 70 business plan docs and present to the professors. It's not that extensive. But they want to make sure that you know how you're going to use those funds and how you're going to continue to grow. In the case of your business, you have accounts receivables, right? And sometimes they take 60, 90 days, even 120 days for those ARs to be paid. So you need a line of credit. So SBA is a good option, but we also have other conventional loans that can help you to pay your staff, to pay your operating expenses, while you wait to get paid for those contracts that you made with your clients.
I see. So we're talking about the SBA loan. I think that's an important part, especially because, as we're representing SCORE, that's in association with the SBA. And you just mentioned conventional loans. Are there other kinds of loans that people could apply for, and what do those look like?
Absolutely. For example, for communities that were impacted by the last couple of years, we opened a program called the Community Loan Fund. It was established to support small businesses and promote business development and job creation in low to moderate income communities. The underwriting process is more flexible. We can go up to $100,000. And also the terms, we can go up to 60 months, 5 years, and the rate is super low. It's only 3% fixed, which is something
Okay.
really, really good. For others that they need more bigger loans, we offer the real estate financing. This could be used to expand businesses or refinance a loan at a lower rate, or term loans that can be used to finance equipment of all types or to expand or improve properties. Typical business equipment financing includes manufacturing, production equipment, commercial vehicle financing, computer and technology equipment, etc. So we have different options, including revolving line of credits for those accounts receivables that will get paid, in 60, 90 days. We can use your ARs as a guarantee, or your inventory if you're a manufacturing company as a guarantee.
Yeah. So I appreciate that, especially because you mentioned line of credit. And I think that that's something, a full disclosure, I've been in business for 8 years and I just got my first line of credit.
Sure.
Not maybe because I really needed it, but because it was just a nice safety net to have there. Can you explain the difference between line of credit versus maybe one of those loans, right? Because they're slightly different.
Correct. Line of credit will give you the flexibility to use those funds whenever you need. Let's say you have a time when you're going to be super busy and you need a line of credit to pay a lot of the things that you need to operate your business. And there might be months, holidays, for example, where you
I
don't.
was gonna say, I know a lot of businesses that have that in Q4 where they do like, 40, 50% of their business in like the holiday season. And so all of the expenses go up in that one quarter. Is that what you mean?
Exactly. That's why
Okay.
Black Friday is called Black Friday, because many of the companies, are in red before Black Friday, and it's when Black Friday hits, that's when they go into,
Yeah.
positive revenue. So for those times, having a line of credit, it's good. The rates are a little bit higher because it's a revolving line of credit. A term loan, on the other side, if you have a big piece of equipment that you need to finance, a term loan will give you the time, the years to pay that off at a lower rate. So let's say you need a huge piece of equipment, $100,000, and you can pay it in 5 years instead of using your credit cards, which, as you know, has really high interest rates. You can finance it with a term loan at a very low rate.
Got it. So I would use a line of credit and get that set up with maybe my bank so that I could use funds sort of like you said, revolving on a short term basis. Whereas I would get a larger loan, be it a term loan or an SBA loan or something of that nature, depending on what I'm spending the money on, in order to get a lower rate with a longer term payoff.
Correct. Correct.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the
Yeah.
benefit of working with a bank to understand what are your needs. And a term loan is also good for commercial loans for real estate. Let's say, for example, your landlord decided to double your rent. We see a lot of our clients because, Nashville is booming and there are more people paying more money to rent a place. So you decided, you know what, I want to buy my own building. So you can get a commercial real estate loan at a very low rate for 20 years amortization to have your own building, which will help you to do anything that you want in your own building because it belongs to you. You don't need to ask for
Stabilized
permission.
your expenses.
hmm
Hmm.
And the equity, as you can see, real estate prices in this city, like in many other places in the country, you're building equity wealth by owning a piece of real
Yeah.
estate.
Yeah. The only trick there is actually getting a piece of real estate and actually like to bid on it and get accepted and be able to buy the property. Everyone I know trying to buy real estate right now is like, I was outbid by 40 people. We're like, what is happening in Nashville? But I agree with that in terms of the what you're saying, like the long term plan. So one of the things that I think is interesting about what you just said as an example is it's a multi-step strategy for a business owner. So when we're talking about loans and we're talking about funding, it's I don't want to say transactional, but it kind of is, right? I can come in as a business owner and say, I need money for X. And you would be able to say, okay, here is a good type of loan or a line of credit, more, but like here's a loan, and this is the one that matches what you want to use the money for, and the right rate and the right payback time frame and all those things. But what you just said is something that I wonder if a lot of people think about, right? They come in and go, my landlord raised my rent. I need more money to pay my rent. Whereas if they come in and talk to you about that, are you going to help them get money to raise to pay the rent? Or are you going to be able to have a conversation and say, what are you strategically doing as a business owner to own your own property, to be earning equity, to have a more stable location, right? So you're not always playing is the rent going to be raised? So what is it that you do? And I kind of know, we've talked a little bit about it, but what are those things that you're working with on clients around business strategy? Because we're talking about loans, but it sounds like it goes so much further than that.
Correct. Having an advisor that understands the industry where you are, the opportunities and challenges, and based on our experience working with similar clients like you, for example, we will be able to forecast some of the opportunities and threats that you may have, and how we can advise you to do something that probably you haven't think about because you're very focused on your business, right? Uh, One thing is real estate. There was a woman-owned business owner recently, for example, that she was growing and she was doing great, and she needed more space in her warehouse. But guess what? The landlord decided to double her rent with very short notice. The landlord probably saw that she was being very successful and wanted a bigger
Yeah.
piece of that pie. So we as a
Mhm.
bankers, we analyze, this is your cash flow, your revenue, your expenses, and this is what you're paying in rent. If you do this, maybe you can own a bigger, better space for your business where you can expand, and we can help you finance at a lower rate. And as you can see, properties can help build equity, properties that are growing in terms of equity. So that's the kind of advice that we provide. We do analysis of your finances and show you where you are, how much you can afford, or if you are not ready yet, we advise you on things that you need to do to be ready for next year to get, a loan to buy your own building. And also show you, the different levels, whether you can afford a $1 million building and how much is going to be your payments, or a $10 million building and how much it's going to cost you. We can help you analyze and make you feel comfortable with the loan payments and the commitment that you're going to have in the long term.
Yeah. So I think that what I keep hearing throughout this is that, there's the SBA loan, there's other loans you guys can give, there's lines of credit. There's all these different ways that people can be financed, but what I kind of keep hearing is it's about a relationship, and it's about someone, be it a banker or, an SBA loan, like it needs to be something where you're developing a relationship with someone who can understand your business and use their expertise, your expertise, to say, here are all the things that you haven't experienced yet. And let me give you some advice. Let me give you some support. Let me give you some direction, so that it's not just you filling out paperwork and saying, here's your loan or here is not your loan. It's saying, what do you really need to grow and to thrive, as opposed to, like you said, it's not just transactional.
Right.
If you can find that really good relationship, then you're going to be able to have somebody build. What I love is that it always comes out, all these conversations we have always come back to this kind of mentorship concept. And I know you don't necessarily go to your banker and say, hey, please be my mentor. But in some cases, it's similar, right? Like we have these resources to work with people at SCORE, at the bank. You mentioned lawyers, you mentioned real estate, all these things that can help us grow without us having to learn all of that on our own. Right? Like
Right.
you can build the relationships and sort of shorten the learning curve by relying on other people's experience and knowledge.
You made a very good point. And like we say, leave the experts talk about their area of expertise. I'm not an attorney. I don't know how to put a contract together to buy a piece of
Yeah.
real estate. But we as bankers, we can help you get the best financing to continue to grow. And whether or not that's a good idea to get this loan, or maybe you need to do something else before you go to that level. is being a long-term strategic advisor, because when you grow your business, the bank relationship grows, your deposits grows with us, your lending needs grow with us, and we're gonna be the advocate for you to help you, to have a sustainable growth. And sometimes we're gonna have a very direct, honest conversation about where you are and what you need to do to get there. So using our expertise, building our relationships in the community, building that synergy is very important with your banker.
Yeah. I like what you're saying about the community too, because if there's one thing I know, every time I start talking with someone in their area of expertise, and I mention, here are the challenges I'm having, or here's what I'm working on, inevitably, Nashville is such a big, small town that they know someone, right? Like everyone that I work with pretty much has been a referral. It's been someone where I'm like, oh my gosh, I just started working with this client in the first year of owning a business and they really took advantage of me. And I wish I would have had a contract, but I don't really know anyone. And whoever I'm talking to is like, oh, I know a lawyer. I'll introduce you. Right. And then, like, that relationship leads to me having my lawyer for the past 7 years, and
Mhm.
him being a really great asset for me and me referring him to other people. And it just kind of like snowballs on itself.
Mhm.
So I like what you're saying about the community connection too, is that it's not that any one person, I don't go to my banker for everything, but my banker knows a lot of other really great people that could help skip that learning curve, right? So, like, even if you're not the lawyer, you probably know a couple that could help me, right? And that even shortens my need to go out and vet 4 or 5 different lawyers.
Exactly. And similar with your business, the same with my business. I've been doing this for 20 years. And many of these clients that I served 20 years ago, they still continue referring clients to us because they saw what we did and they know we're going to help their friend to succeed in their business. We're not a product pusher. We don't sell a product and move on. We're there to help you with other things that you need to think about: treasury management, having a revolving line of credit, or buying the building in 1, 2 years once you're ready and build equity on that. Um, Treasury management services. There is a lot of fraud out there. So how do you mitigate and control that risk for your business? So no one, takes money out of your business from your bank account. All that kind of advice is very important so we can avoid situations that will take a lot of time and energy of our clients. So having a strategic advisor who understands the market, who understands where you are serving, is very, very important.
It's very good. So I'm going to ask you, we've got you here. And I know that this is like, we came to talk about loans, but I'm going to ask you a couple of really specific questions at what I'm going to consider to be sort of like a financial introductory level. Because oftentimes when I'm mentoring clients or I'm talking to people who are starting businesses, they have some questions about financial reporting. And you mentioned it earlier. And now we're kind of getting into this, right? Like, you're going to come and develop a relationship. Republic Bank or whichever bank people choose to go with, and they're trying to get a loan, is going to need some really specific things. And in order to develop the foundation of that relationship, you mentioned a few different kinds of documents earlier. And I was wondering if you could give me kind of a breakdown. Like, you mentioned a P&L, which is a profit and loss statement, right?
Right.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
then you mentioned a balance sheet. Can you kind of just give me a cursory overview of what those two things are? Because I know a lot of business owners that just start a business and they're out spending money, and then tax time comes and they go, what is it that you need from me? It's a what now? Right. So I think some of those things, it sounds like if we knew what those were to begin with, we would be better prepared to sit down at a table with a banker and talk about strategic planning.
Very good point. And pretty much the standard is we request, if you're an established business, we request 2 years of financial information. SBA, they require 3 years. They want to see a longer history of your finances. And those are your personal and your business tax returns. They need to be available for any bank that you go. So those tax returns, very important. Also,
And some people, Luis, some people file their business and their personal
together.
like conjunctively, right? So, like,
Mhm.
I'm a sole proprietor.
Right,
So, even though I have a business with an LLC, I file my tax returns as an individual person
right.
and I report on the business earnings. So, like, there's different categories for different types of businesses, right?
Correct. So if you're doing at the
Okay.
personal level, we will see your Schedule C, where you're putting
Yep.
your sales, your expenses, and your net income. So we're gonna look at that
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
And then if you have a profit and loss statement for last year and year to date, that's very important to see how you're doing with your sales. Are they stable? Are they growing? And what kind of expenses you're having? What kind of depreciation you are reporting as well? That's very important. Balance sheet, whether you have a huge amount of accounts receivables, we will look at that. And we're going to have a conversation about, do you have a concentration on just this big client that represents 90% of your sales, of your revenue? Is that healthy? What if, the client decides to go with someone else? So we'll have those tough but very important conversations to help you diversify your source of income. That's why having the P&L and balance sheet will help us to do that.
Mm-hmm.
The balance sheet, it will show, as you know, the assets, your liability, and network. So we can see whether
Mm-hmm.
or not you still have capacity for more loans, capacity to continue to grow. What is your network? So we will tell you, a healthy balance sheet. We want to see X amount of cash reserve, X amounts of accounts receivables, X amount of liabilities, and an X amount of network. And we will help you because you're going to continue to grow. You want to probably hire more people and get your own building. We will tell you, how to get there. And working with your accountant is very important. A lot of our clients, they don't want to pay a lot of taxes. So they do a lot of depreciation.
I don't know anyone that wants to pay a lot of taxes. Yeah.
Right? But at the same time, if you're showing losses in your business,
Mm-hmm.
how can we justify, a loan to buy a building? So it has to be a balanced act. So we will help you to get to that level of having that honest conversation with your accountant and tell you, what are the things that you need to do to be successful and to be bankable for a loan.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So the having the documentation, and again, when I first got set up, I used a program called FreshBooks, and just did it myself because I didn't have the money to hire an accountant, and it was like I can keep track of the 7 things that I'm spending money on. When you first get started, because I'm in a service-based business, so I didn't have all the the equipment and the overhead and all the stuff. It made it easy, but then over time it got to be okay. We are getting bigger and there are more expenses, and I do need to have an accountant help me and make sure I'm doing it right. And we upgraded to QuickBooks. And then with QuickBooks, it produces my P&L and it produces my balance sheet and some of the other reporting that I've been asked about by the bankers as well. So I think one of the big things that I hear myself and other SCORE mentors suggest to our clients is, start early. Like, even if you're not sure, I don't even know if I need a loan, doesn't matter. Like, eventually you're going to need to have the reporting for your business, for filing taxes, and just, everything else that goes along with it, of putting those things into those documents so that it's clean and clear. And you don't have to go back if you're like, hey, I really need a loan right now, but I haven't done my paperwork. Now you have to go figure all of that out in the rears before you can even start the loan process or whatever else you might be trying to do.
The Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, was a good example, having all those financials ready. And I wanted to help more people, but because they were cash transactions and they didn't have their financials ready,
Yeah.
it was hard for us to go back to the SBA and say, this business client deserve this PPP loan that is going to be
Hmm.
forgivable afterwards because they didn't have those documents
Yeah.
ready. So that's why having a good relationship with a banker that can
Hmm.
forecast, help you, mitigate those risks in the future is very important.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with what you're saying. The PPP, and they said, hey, like it's application time and it was very competitive and you have to get it in as quickly as possible. And then to go back and try to pull all those numbers, even though my company had that financial data, we still had to work with our accountant to get the right data out of the sheets to fill out the PPP loan because they wanted certain numbers out of certain line items. How much are your salaries and wages? And then that had to be extrapolated into like year to date versus all that. It was like, oh my gosh, like, why is this so? And it's not. I mean, it's information that's necessary and we get it. But like, to your point, as a business owner, I'm focused on the business. Right. And so like coming back and saying, let me pause for several hours and try to, extrapolate and crunch all these numbers becomes really tedious, especially if everything isn't really clean and clear, and I don't have somebody to work with that helps me understand those numbers. So I can sit down and force myself to be like, tell me what this means, but it doesn't come naturally. So having somebody who understands it really, really helps.
It does. Having a good relationship with an accountant to help you, also to see on a monthly basis how you're doing, why this month went down and this month is up. Where can I see, in the next 3 months, the revenue so I can justify these expenses that I'm doing, these investments to grow my business. That's very important to have that connection. The PPP, that rules from the government change almost on a daily basis. So we needed to calculate the gross sales, the net income, your 3.5 months of salaries. I mean, there were a lot of numbers
Yeah.
that we needed to put together that the government was asking. So
Yeah.
I feel the pain that you probably went through, to get those numbers. But those were requirements for us to get those,
Oh, yeah.
especially for those that they were doing transactions with cash, and they didn't have those numbers ready. So we want to help small business owners to be ready for those opportunities, or for SBA loans, for example, that can help you grow your business, help you, to get a line of credit until you get your accounts receivables paid, and how we can help you, mitigate the time between getting paid and paying those bills. There's a lot of strategies that a good banker and experienced business banker can help you explore.
Yeah. So how often, Louise, should we be seeing our banker? Like, I mean, if you're actively applying for a loan, I think that that's a specific thing, right? You go in for it. If you're just like, hey, I think I might need a loan in the future, or I'm trying to build my business in general and I don't need a loan yet, but maybe one day I will. How often should we be sort of going to a banker, sitting down and saying, this is what I have. What do I need? What should I be thinking about? Like, is there some strategy behind the frequency of building that relationship?
It's on a case by case scenario, because a lot of other business owners, they also have other personal needs. Let's say, for example, you want to buy a house. How can I get ready with my business, the income I'm getting from my business, to be eligible for this mortgage loan? Or what do I need to do to buy this piece of equipment that will help me grow my business? So a good banker will tell you, we need to meet on a monthly or quarterly, or at least a couple times per year, to review your
Hmm.
finances and see where you are and whether or not you're ready to get a loan, or we
Yeah.
need to do X amount of work to get you ready for that loan. I have clients that they bought a multi-million dollars um, piece of commercial real estate, and we've been working for 2, even 3 years to get to that place. And now they're happy business owners with happy, equity in their books. So it takes a village, it takes work, but that commitment, that relationship is very important with your banker.
Yeah, but I hear what you're saying about the planning though. So for example, I wanted to buy a house. This has been years ago, but I wanted to buy a house, but I wasn't ready to buy a house yet. But I still set up a relationship with a lender and had them pre-qualify me for the house. So I could know how much could I potentially spend on a house, and then I could sit with that number for a minute and be like, let me pretend that I was spending that money every month. Like, if I was spending that money every month, would I be able to cover it? Would I have money left over? Like, do I have that to spend every month? And after I had sat with it for several months, it was like, oh, okay, no. Like, I now know how I like one, how much money the bank would give me or that, I could get a loan for. And two, that I am comfortable spending X amount of dollars per month in order to buy a house of that size. Because otherwise, it's just sort of a shot in the dark. I mean, a lot of those numbers on paper can seem very disconnected, they can seem very intangible. It's just hundreds or thousands of data points on a piece of paper. But like you said, if you say, hey, I want to buy a house and I want to sit down with someone and say, this is a 2-year plan. What is it that I want to buy? How much is that going to be? And what do I need to save or how do I need to plan and prepare to get there so that when I actually get a mortgage statement or, a warehouse, or a piece of equipment, that bill comes and it doesn't feel like a random number on a piece of paper. It feels like something that I can actually afford and I've planned to purchase.
That is correct. That's why having the banker to do that credit and financial analysis for you and see how much you can afford or what you need to do to afford that property that you want to buy. That's very important to have that conversation with your banker. And there are some that they are ready now. There are some that they are ready in 6 months. Some that might take 3 years. But having that persistence and a fluent conversation with your banker and accountant will help you grow, achieve those goals that you have.
So we've talked about some of the details and let's call it the materials, right? Like the materials you would have to bring to the table to apply for a loan. One of the things I'd love to hear from you is some of the like the insider knowledge. What are those tips and tricks and things that bankers are uniquely looking for when they're qualifying loans that maybe aren't written on that sheet, right? Not that here's the list of things you need to bring to the table. What is that extra little oomph that somebody can bring that you guys are taking into consideration when people are applying?
That's a great question. When you go to a bank to request a loan, the first thing that the business loan officer will be to see the 5 C's of credit: character, cash flow, capacity, condition, and collateral. There is a lot of information under those 5 C's, but I'm going to summarize that in a very plain, simple way for our audience to understand. When we look into character, we're looking about past performance as the primary indicator of future success. For example, were you behind on your credit card payments or your car loan payments? We're going to look at that to see if you're going to be have the character to get this bigger business loan from the bank. Your credit score, your FICO, very important to keep an eye on that as well.
Okay.
Also, assessing credit risk of business by using certain score agencies, in this case, Dun and Bradstreet. So if your business was asking for small business loans in just 1 year, that's going to, just like your personal credit score is going to go down.
Oh, yeah, because people could go, like, if you went to 3 different banks and tried to apply for loans at each of the banks, like, there's somebody tracking how many loans you're applying for globally. So if you go into the 4th or 5th bank, they're going to be like, hey, you've already applied for all of these other loans.
Right. And your capacity to pay those loans max out, right? So we want to make sure that we have that information. And what are the drivers of the score as well? For example, were you late on your payments? You have filed bankruptcy? How long was that bankruptcy? All of those things we're going to look under the character part of the 5 C's of credit. The other one is cash flow, your debt service coverage. What is the debt service coverage? Basically, how much money you're making and how much those loans are going to cost you and whether or not you have enough funds to pay that, because we don't want to give
the
you
delta that's left.
Yeah, because we don't want to give you a loan that you cannot afford. We want to make sure that you and the bank are comfortable with that. That's why the stability of the cash flow is important, to see that your revenue, net income is stable. Or if there were some up and down times, we want to see what happened during those times. Capacity, the financial condition, value of all assets as compared to liability. So I'm sure you heard the term during the financial crisis of being under the water, when the mortgage loan was way higher than the house. So we want to see that the value of the asset that you have or the asset that you're buying has enough value for the loan that you have. For example, when we
Sure.
do an appraisal, and that's why it's good to work with a third party like a bank and an appraiser, they're going to assess and let you know if this property is worth what you're paying. So you're not being taken advantage by the seller by not knowing that. So that's very important. Consumer network, what are your cash reserve? What are your equity that you have? Very important as well to have a cushion in case something happens. And of course, business equity or debt to equity, having that equity built in your business. A lot of business owners, they build equity by owning a piece of real estate, for example. That's a very good way. I'm sure you heard of the story of the McDonald's movie.
Yes.
That's a good example that I put when I'm talking about business equity. They sold hamburgers and French fries, but real estate was the real
Right,
equity that
right.
they built in this
Oh,
empire.
they do tons of research on that. I learned that when I was in when I was getting my degree. We had a whole section in class about like building a business and equity versus what you're actually selling, and they were talking about all of the research that McDonald's does on the real estate, the property before they build something. So it's not like they just come into town and do it. Like they're like mapping out the routes between schools and like baseball fields and like churches to find the most trafficked popular areas, and that's where they put the McDonald's. And it was like, oh my gosh, I'd never considered that, but you just see them everywhere. So
Yes. And that was a great strategy. They were selling, but they were also
Mhm.
building equity by getting these properties and getting credit from banks to acquire these properties. So that's why it's very important to have that conversation. Another very important C is condition, the business economic conditions, all of the other external factors that can affect things, most of which are outside the borrower's control during the COVID, situation. If you're coming and say, I want to open a restaurant when people were not being able to go to restaurants, restaurants were shut down.
Yeah, not a good idea. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and I have really tough conversation with clients. I say, you know, what is your competitive advantage? Why you want to do this in this moment?
Mhm.
And,
Now is not the time, maybe. Yeah.
right. And the economy of the city. You open this restaurant in a city where tourism is big and thriving, or you want to open a restaurant in the middle of somewhere where there's no traffic. Just like the McDonald's, you have to do all that analysis, and the banker can help you answer some of those questions. And collateral, what kind of collateral? Something of value that pledged to secure a loan. The more collateral you have, the better chances you have to get a loan at a lower rate. Uh, Secure versus unsecure. Unsecure is the line of credits that we discussed before,
Hmm.
and their respective level of risk. And loan to
Okay.
value, how to calculate that. Normally, when you ask for a conventional loan, they want to see that you're putting 20% down. SBA, you can go as low as only 10%. But the more equity you're putting, more skin in the game, the better chances you have to get that loan approved.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those
No,
are
that's all really
basically
helpful. Yeah. And I think, can you say the 5 C's again?
character, cash flow, capacity, condition, and collateral.
And collateral. Okay. I think that, again, it's a really nice little cheat sheet to be able to say, I'm coming in and I'm bringing all these materials or all these financial documents that I've been asked for, but here are the other things that we need to be considerate of when we're walking in. Because it sounds like any banker is going to have questions around those 5 C's, and being prepared to answer those questions and say, here are where those things are. Here is how I manage my money. Here's what I'm planning to do with this loan is only going to help us get approved, which is really helpful.
That is correct. And having for an established business or startup, having for a startup in this case, having a business plan, outline these is going to make them feel more secure and the bank more comfortable to get the loan approved.
Well, and it sounds like rather than a 60 or 70 page rant, like business plan, having a more consolidated business plan that focuses on those 5 C's would be a better presentation to a banker. Right. So like, here are the different things that I want to address within my business, and that, all of these things, rather than just like, here's everything I've ever done and will ever do. Like, well, let's focus that a little bit.
That is correct. Yes, we cannot be jack of all trades, right? And I see
Yeah.
medical doctors getting into the restaurant business, and even though they have the equity and the collateral, they're not, operating managers. Running a restaurant is a tough business. It takes another set of skills. You may be a very smart person, but that's not your expertise. So how do you mitigate that? Do you have a good operating manager with experience on that in that industry for you to be successful, or we rather help you focusing on what you know to do well? So that those are the conversations we have on a regular basis with our commercial clients.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today, Luis. This has been a bounty of information. I do want to let everyone know, if you have additional questions about the SBA loans, the program in general, you can go to the SBA website. That's the Small Business Administration. It's at sba.gov. And of course, we will have all of Republic Bank's information in our show notes as well. So if you're interested in having a conversation with Luis about a loan or about your banking in general, I'm sure he would be happy to answer those questions for you. But thank you so much for being with us here today and sharing all of this amazing information about small business loans.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And yes, feel free to reach out to me. There are great organizations like SCORE and others that they provide that kind of coaching for new entrepreneurs and established business owners. And we are just adding value to those efforts. It takes a village, and we're here to help.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we will see you at the next episode.